And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, Gary, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where each week, oh my gosh, we're here every Monday. Each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design for the past 11 years. It is currently a design-only business here east of the GTA. With me is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy doing Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. So as always, we welcome your questions via social media, emails, and phone calls.
That's right. And our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And we want to thank everybody again for joining us here down the garden path and let you know that it is available on your podcast app. Last week's show is a little late, but that's okay.
My fault.
And subscribe to Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app, and you'll be notified as soon as it loads. And so we want to thank you, everybody, and please like and subscribe, and leave a comment.
Yeah.
Right?
And don't forget to share with your other gardening friends.
That's right. Yeah, spread the word. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that really need some advice. I know Matt and I belong to a few different Facebook gardening groups where there's a lot of novice gardeners, and we really want to appeal to everybody. And we're here, every week. And it's our monthly In the Garden episode, which is where I said off the top of the show. So it is the last Monday of the month, which means it is the next month's In the Garden, right? So today is October in the Garden. Does that explain it? No,
that did.
Confusing.
I think so.
Yeah, but you know it.
So. I know it, so maybe it's just obvious.
So welcome, everybody. This is one of our most popular shows because it covers a lot, and it covers the low maintenance that we try to promote and letting you know what to do or what not to do in your garden.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. So if you have a question about your garden, maybe about October, or some timing on something, instudio101@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Absolutely. Like we do all the time, which we love.
We do.
Yeah. So that's good. So what's going on? It's October. October in the garden center means it's Christmas.
Yes, unfortunately it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Christmas trees are up. Thanksgiving is next week. And our Christmas setup is coming up, and it's just going to be totally converted. So the trees and shrubs are on sale. The perennials are on sale. Bulbs are out. Lots of stuff to still be had at good prices. The variety, the selection's not going to be there.
Right.
Like it's not going to be a spring selection, but there's still definitely some staples that are out there and some unusual things that are pretty good.
Excellent.
Just one of the things I would like to say about the garden center buying things, take a look at the roots, make sure that they're healthy. The plants, remember, it's fall, it's getting cool, they're stressed in that little pot. A lot of the times they really need just to get in the ground and have a good home. So don't necessarily judge a book by its cover at the moment. And
I've heard too that this late in the season, just if you get it home and let's say maybe there's a bloom or two on the flower, or, that it's really just better to cut that off so that the plant just focuses on setting its roots as opposed to trying to flower.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've done it once or twice both ways.
It's hard to do.
It is hard to do. And I honestly, I don't recall if one of them did well versus
it's hard
the
to
other,
it's hard to know because we never know when the frost is going to come and when the real cold's going to come. So I think it's still a little ways away. Tomorrow apparently is going to be like the hottest day ever in October. So so who knows?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Yes, we don't know, but that's good. So it's important to check the roots. What if the roots are growing through the pot?
Yeah, that's usually not an overly good sign.
Ah.
It can be a little bothered or a little overly stressed.
Right.
But like
because now you have to rip them to get them out of the pot, right?
Right, and like roots or like a boxwood or a yew, right? You know, when you prune them, it provides a little bit more growth. They break, they fatten up and fill out. Roots will have the same growing tips on them as well. So when you break them, there are certain spots that are more likely to break and become other roots.
Okay.
Or more roots. So, yeah, depending on how stressed it is, it probably is a little under stress. But I've also planted one or two that were like that, and they were some of my best ones.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, so never know.
So you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. Plants are tough.
They are. Sometimes
they really are tough.
Mm-hmm.
But give it a try. Because usually there's only a few bucks, and a lot of places still have warranties, even to the price you pay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, roll the dice. I mean, push come to shove, you got a really good deal, and you get your money back next year.
That's right. I will give a shout out because this happened. There was a conversation also on one of the Facebook groups that there are a bunch of people, you know, thinking of the sales or freer time this time of year. And making these big new beds, and then they're just putting it on a Facebook group saying, "Okay, what should I put in?" And you know, other people are referring them to an app and different things like that. So I know we're biased because we're both garden designers, but I do want to say you can't do what we've gone to school for it. We know the seasons, we know the curb appeal, we know the growing habits. It's not just about flowers. It's not something that it's much more intuitive than what an app can do. You know, an app can maybe find you that shady plant for this one situation or something like that, maybe kind of, sort of. But you know, I just want to encourage everybody wherever you are, and I know we've got listeners all over the world, to go into your local garden center, or you know, look up online your local garden designer, landscape designer, and get some advice. You know, most should offer some kind of a consultation service, and yeah, if it's a couple $100, but I believe me, you will save that money in plants that you buy even on sale, right? And time and effort. So there's nothing worse than creating these big gardens and filling it with stuff and then it not looking good and you really being disappointed. And I can say that as a landscape designer who did that. So that's how I started in all this. You can go back and read my story on my website at downtoearth.ca. But we bought a house. I knew nothing. We bought our first house in the fall, end of October, and moved in January, and spring came, and it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I rototilled everything and put all new stuff in, all the, you know, so anyway, it's all there. But so I do want to just encourage everybody that regardless of the time of year, really you're starting with a plan is you won't regret it.
All I can do is second that. Exactly. There's so much going on in those little spaces, more than just, I mean, like you said, we're trained eyes.
Yes.
More than like plants and more than plants and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
you'll definitely find it's worth your money. You'll enjoy it so much more and so much quicker.
That's right. That's right. So yeah. So anyway.
So there you go. So you can find Joanne at down2earth.ca. And you can find me at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca. We're always willing to help. You can also always reach us here at instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right.
So that's pretty much what's going on in the garden center.
Yeah.
What about your garden?
My garden is kind of, you know, I'm just enjoying it when I walk by. Anyway, so it's definitely looking fall, and I'm loving it. I took some pictures. Actually, I walked to a neighbor's. Last night it was kind of cloudy, you know, and I was walking a neighbor's dog, and I was walking back across the street to my house, and I'm like, oh, garden looks good. and it's muted now. Like, I think all the real vibrant summer colors, you know, it's still very colorful, but it's just funny how, you know, the hydrangeas have gone to that dusty pink and burgundy as opposed to the bright whites, and you know, that type of thing. So I just was like, oh, it's very colorful, and I'm still loving it. But the smoke on the smoke bush has gone very silver, and you know, that type of thing. So it's kind of just all muted. So I was really happy with that. I might post a picture on Instagram later, but so it's doing fine. I've been enjoying cutting my hydrangeas and bringing them in the house.
I love that.
And my girlfriends know to do it, and I've been sharing with neighbors. because there's so much of them. We always kind of cut at the back kind of thing, so you don't see your cut underneath, because it's just, I have so many. And so I love, keeping a couple blooms in the bathroom and the kitchen and all over the house. So, and they're great because they do last a long time. And they actually, instead of dying, they actually dry. And I've kind of had I've got so many supplies of dried hydrangeas. But so I'm just kind of enjoying the bees. We'll talk about that. But I have to say, my Japanese anemone, oh my goodness, to see the bees flock into that and fighting and it's been really cool. And that's where I see that the most, because it's right by my front door. But I know the bees are still in my Roseanne geranium and my catmint and stuff as well. So yeah.
Nice. Very, very nice. Very nice.
So
my window boxes are pretty much.
Oh, did you harvest your potatoes yet?
No, my brother's wedding this weekend, and I had jury selection today. So
I know. I can't believe you had what timing?
The last
he did
5
not
days.
Oh my gosh,
it's just been nuts. So I am looking very much forward to digging them all up and finally seeing what they're going to be.
Now, are you waiting for the plant to the leaves to die? Right?
Totally dead.
Okay. Are they yet?
They are. Yes. So she's totally died back.
Okay.
I grew them in a big 90-liter nursery pot. They were 3.5, 4 feet tall, and they finally just kind of collapsed and have done nothing.
Okay.
And at that point, it's kind of give it 2 weeks, let them kind of skins harden off and do it, and then dig them up.
Okay.
So I think it's pretty much been 2.5 weeks now.
Okay, because of the wedding.
Yeah. So I can't wait, and I can't wait to make lavender potatoes and different colored chips, because I grew Russian blue.
Oh,
so when you cut it open, it's just liquid purple.
Even the inside, not just the outside.
Right. So the outside is an ink blue.
Can you Instagram?
Purple.
You have to Instagram.
I was gonna say, I'll have to Instagram some photos and bring a couple in for you and cut one open and show you. And if you want, I can give you some seed potatoes for next year.
Oh, that might be
So,
cool.
Yeah,
that might be cool.
Really easy.
And I don't know if everybody caught our show last week, which was a great show. I did go in and buy some garlic, so I'm excited to plant it. I didn't overdo it, because I think you think, there's only 3 bulbs in there, I need more, but then you realize once you break those all up, that really takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So it really was it was $8. It wasn't, you know what I mean? I know we talked about how the expense and the work and blah blah blah. Well, it was only $8. So. And then I don't know if I offended the lady in the grocery store line behind me when I kind of picked up her garlic and looked at it to see where it was from, and it was from China. And I looked at it and I said, I think you need to buy Canadian garlic, Ontario garlic. She's like, is that better? I'm like, there's a whole other reasons for why that's better. But anyway, so kind of a little aggressive there. Anyway. So I'm excited that I hope everybody that if you missed last week's show, tune in to the podcast. It'll be up in the next couple of days. We can grow some garlic.
And we talked about growing it in containers. So
That's
if you don't have a spot in the ground, do it in containers. That's exactly what I'm going to do the second that I harvest those potatoes. I'm going to in that soil, and I'm going to put in some bulbs and see how they run. So I can't wait.
Oh, that's good.
It'll be fun.
That's good. And I'm excited. There's always lots to talk about in the October garden.
Yes.
And I think the biggest thing is I think everybody starts to get antsy, oh no, what should we be doing? What should we be doing? And really our biggest takeaway we want everybody to have is you should be doing nothing.
Yes.
Don't you agree?
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. And
sit down and enjoy it.
Yes. Just let the colors change, let the leaves start to fall, and just enjoy.
Yes.
Just enjoy. Just like you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So please, everybody, there's no need to start cutting things back. There's no need to what else?
All the the stereotypical stuff, right? Rake all the leaves out, cut all the hydrangeas way back.
Turn the soil.
ground,
Oh my gosh,
turn
please
all
don't.
the soil.
Yeah, please don't.
Right. Exactly. Cut all those dead heads because they just look ugly and they're all rotting and brown looking. And no. So for those of you who are out there who are going, what do you mean I don't do anything? Yeah, just leave it. Look at the dry flowers, right? They are going to dry. They're going to finish their life cycle. They're going to produce seeds. And what do seeds do? Well, that's a primary food source for most of the animals and birds and small creatures out in your yard. They need to eat too, and those are their They're little refrigerators. They're their little storages. They can come to those and visit your garden and pick those clean and feed.
That's right.
We talk about, low maintenance, natural ways to take care of your gardens. Ladybugs. We are in a boreal region of the world, right? Most of, and if for those of you who are here in the GTA with us, we are a wooded area. If we go back far enough, it's all woods. So our native ladybugs, right? The leaves start to fall. That's where they know to go. There's a number of beneficial insects that know to go into either the barks of their trees or under into the leaves and the fallen debris, or we're talking about the flower stems again, the stalks of certain weeds, or we call them weeds. To them, they're home. Flower stalks and other plants that they can identify, that they can go into and know that they're going to be safe to come out next winter or lay their eggs or the babies to overwinter. Yeah. So there's so much more going on in the fall garden than just things dying. It's a cycle, right?
Yeah, the little life cycle.
Right. What we see as death is life for billions more that are surrounding us that we don't see.
For sure. And I think it felt, it's environmentally good, because I think a lot of people are building these bird houses or bee houses and bird houses and all these different things, insect hotels, that are kind of being marketed. But really, if we just left our gardens alone, that's the natural circle of life. And then even the bugs, like the bugs that stay, then the birds that come to your bird feeder, maybe, will eat those bugs too, that type of thing. So it really is promoting, it's a big full circle thing. So to really promote that, I noticed one thing on Instagram, all my social media, where tons of people posting pictures of praying mantises. Mantises or mantisae? I don't know.
Mantises, yeah.
Okay. And that's another insect, right? That, you often don't see, but it eats a lot of the bad bugs not that anything's bad, but, like aphids and different things like that. Yeah. And they eat a tremendous amount. So those, and they're overwintering in our gardens too, right? And laying eggs and all of that. That's just another example.
Yeah, if you've ever gone out on a weed or a stem and you see this big brown papery growth around the stem, especially in denser weeded spots, like if you have a thicker group of just picking an example, rudbeckia. Okay. You've got a big stand of rudbeckia. It's kind of protected in there. You can see the little papery growth. They lay it right over the stem. Oh, wow. And it'll overwinter.
They'll do that even on a perennial, like they're not looking for shrubs and stuff.
No, they can do it on a perennial. They'll do it on a shrub, anywhere that mom feels that she can be protected. And they will overwinter. Yeah. And that's the best time actually to come to the garden center if you're thinking about introducing praying mantises, because I know in our area, at least here, I haven't seen a wild praying mantis, save like at the garden center, and sometimes we release them and sometimes we don't. But I haven't seen one before that since I was like a kid. Really? Playing when I was like 12. So a lot of people are saying that they don't see them anymore. But winter is the time to let them go. Is go into your garden center. Very early spring, they're available. You can put them out when it's still frozen in April and March, and hang it out and let them naturally just kind of come out. So excellent. Yeah, there's lots of things. 90% of all bugs eat other bugs, so they need a place.
And then the birds eat those bugs,
right? And then other things eat bugs.
All right. So now that we've told everybody what they shouldn't be doing,
right?
What should they be doing?
Well, I think we have a question.
Oh, we do.
To that. So let's take a look here. Gail writes in, "Hello, Joanne and Matthew. I just wanted to sincerely thank the two of you for all your great advice that you have given me through this year's growing season. Great tips. Thanks again, Gail."
You're very welcome, Gail. Yeah, you're welcome, Gail. Please tell all your friends. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thanks for tuning in. So I think one of the things that you and I always talk about when it comes to doing things in your garden, and we're a big proponent of this, is the watering. So we do get... we all like it's cooler. There's a lot of fall rains coming. I know the past weekend or this weekend past, we had a little bit of rain. We had very little where I was for the wedding.
Oh, good. I thought I was worried about that.
Yeah, it rained like that Friday night and just like into the wee hours of Saturday morning, and we were good.
Oh, good.
But that little bit of rain doesn't really water anything. So if you guys have planted evergreens or new trees and shrubs, remember, keep watering to the bottom of that hole, especially your evergreens.
How long do you think that is? So if there's a soaker hose on, I just planted some yews and boxwoods for a client, and I we strung a soaker hose through it, and I told her to keep the hose on for an hour a day.
Yeah,
you think?
About an hour, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And then just watching as it goes. I mean, if she's putting on an hour a day and, it soaks it and the plant's not using it,
right.
Obviously, right. And then that's the trick with the cooler weather too, right?
It's not drying out as fast as the heat. Yeah.
Right. So we can get into some issues there too. I like to recommend, and our garden center recommends, once the ground or the trees and the perennials lose all their leaves and they die back to the ground, that's the point, especially for like your evergreens you're using boxwoods, once a week to the bottom of the hole that you dug until the ground freezes solid.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it was like 8 years ago, Christmas Day, it was 10 degrees. Merry Christmas, here's the hose, out you go.
Yeah.
Because they use it. They're getting swept by the wind and they're still green and photosynthesizing. But
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So keep watering.
Don't
let the rain water for you.
Yes, the rain, it doesn't work. Barely works for the lawn. It certainly does not work for your trees and evergreens. Shout out to a reminder also on your city trees, your boulevard trees, and your even trees in your own yard, that they also can't rely on the rain, so give them a good deep watering. Leave the hose on trickle while you're making dinner, set the timer, give it a nice deep watering. You certainly don't need to get the sprinkler out and kind of spray all over the place, right? So it's a bit more really precise. You say kind of like precise. I know my Dawn Redwood that kind of struggled. It was planted later than this last year, and then did some deep root fertilizer. Kind of came back this spring, but not looking great, a little bit sparse. My arborist did a great job of deep root water fertilizing. And so I was looking at it and I was thinking, I think you need some, really defined water.
Mm-hmm.
So I know even my sons were like, because we can hear the hose, when you're inside the house, you can hear that the hose is on outside the house. And they're all like walking around looking at me like, the hose is on? And I'm like, yes, it's cooler and it's been raining, but the hose is on. So yes, everybody, that is a big thing to consider.
Yes, exactly.
And especially if it's something newly planted. Right?
Yes, especially the newly planted stuff.
Yes.
Everything you bought this year for sure.
For sure. Even if it was planted in like June.
Yep.
It still needs to have go into its first winter really protected. Things or Japanese maples that maybe you've had for a few years. They are often, people are like, I've had it for 5 years and then it just didn't make it through the winter. And lots of times they, because it's happy and it looks so regal and it's amazing and you're not paying any attention to it but enjoying it. But you're also not watering it, right? That deep, deep water that it needs to get through the winter.
Mm-hmm. And they're young and they just don't have the roots to draw it from everywhere else. Exactly.
That's right.
One of the things we're talking about, just kind of leaving everything for the garden. I guess there would be maybe one exception to that if you had some really diseased trees. This year was a very wet spring. We saw a lot of funguses. And
perennials too. Like I'm thinking like the
even
peonies,
peonies, anything like powdery mildew, your echinaceas, your lilacs, like anything. Yeah. Those are the ones that you would want to, cut back and remove them. You don't want that disease to continue to spread. You don't want that to mulch in and then come out and be splashed around or moved around, because you can touch it and move it to other things too, right?
Yes.
So you want to just make sure you're clean and remove those, get rid of those, and don't touch all the other good things. While you've got them on your blades and your hands and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then everything else can just die into place. Yeah.
Excellent. So, so definitely peonies. And I think once the frost hits, I know there's a lot of hosta lovers out there, and when the hard frost does finally hit and they all go yellow, then absolutely, go ahead and pick those up, to discourage slugs and stuff. That's where we definitely don't want things overwintering. But aside from that, because they really are gross, right? They tend to go pretty mushy and yellow and that kind of thing. Or if you had a bad earwig or slug infestation this past year and they're all looking pretty lacy, go ahead and give them a cut back now in preparation. But aside from that, those are some of the things we're thinking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
And so we've got another question. So Janice has written in, and still water the lawn this time of year or just let it go dormant? Thanks. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely it's going to grow much, much quicker because it's nice and cool. We're in that temperature range where she's going to continue to grow. But if you've definitely had some issues, it's not thick, you haven't kept it at 3 inches, and you don't really have a good or had a good watering schedule, or you need to kind of repair it, definitely keep it moving.
Okay.
If you've got it thick, it's dense, you've had it at that 3.5 or 3 inches.
It's really healthy. It's fine.
It's nice and fine, right? You've given it some good water during the rest of the season. She should have enough of a reserve that she should be good, because she's going to protect it from the wind.
Okay.
Unlike the other exposed soils of the base of perennials and things. So the lawn is a little bit more forgiving, but definitely keep the seeds watered. Maybe give it, instead of once every 2 days that you're doing it, or however often you're watering, open it up a little bit more. Go like to the evergreens, like that once a week.
Okay.
But yeah, don't. I wouldn't let it go dormant. Should we do
grass seed?
Yeah, anywhere where it's like that 16 to 22 degrees Celsius. And
okay.
It's still around that 10 degrees at night. The grass, this is the time where the grass seed is going to go crazy. And the fall is the best time to do it.
Okay.
Because we're going to get a really great growing season through the fall, that prime temperature. It's very easy to take the winter temperatures. It's more that we walk on it or oversalt it or compact all the snow and the ice, or we get an ice storm, right? Mm-hmm. Where the lawn is covered in a thing of ice. That's where that'll suffocate your lawn. It'll just cut off the air.
If there's lots of snow, that's kind of like the snow pile that stays in that spot, right? And then when you finally that last bit in the north side, whatever. That
can kind of turn to ice and grind it into pieces. But yeah, that's kind of the damage there. But and then we wake up into spring, and again the temperatures come back up, and it's perfect for the grass. But you've got that extra growing grass season, so you can see what's taken. You can cut out most of that extra dead stuff, or anything that didn't take. You can go back and repair. And continue to work on, is what I was trying to say. But going from seed, it can take up to a year and a half before you really get that nice, dense, thick, because each seed is one plant, which one blade comes out of, and it needs to spread out again. So
Jen, I don't think you need to let it go dormant. I think the temperatures are great. It should be pretty happy with the cooler temperatures and the a little bit of rain we're getting. But if you definitely want to encourage healthy growth, then once a week as well. We don't want to do it too often to encourage shallow roots.
Yes.
You want them nice deep roots.
Nice and deep. Yeah. Right now it's prime.
Excellent.
For sure.
All right. So what else should we talk about?
One of the things we can do now is transplanting our deciduous trees and shrubs. And we're talking in the later half
of October
when they've fallen. They've kind of gone to sleep. They're slowing down. Their roots are still a little bit active.
Okay.
And then we can kind of dig them up and move them. And that is be the time for the least amount of stress for them.
So better now than in the spring.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They're kind of waking up. They're getting active again. We don't want to kind of disturb them or turn them off. Or even, depending on what it is, bleed them out. You can cut things that are like the heavy sap movers, for example. Your maples, your fruit trees are probably the two more prominent ones that we know. And the city does it because I live in Oshawa, so it's down by the lake. They go in and they cut the trees back from all the paths, and we get a warm day in March, and suddenly there are all these we haven't seen snow or ice for like a week, and suddenly all the cut trees have icicles on them.
Oh, from the sap.
Right. It's early March. They're starting to move their sap. It's slow, and it's pure sugar just bleeding out of them.
Gosh.
Yes. So
now's the time to do it. So are we digging up, taking as much soil as possible? Or are we okay if it's more bare rooted, or what are we doing?
Take as big of a root ball as you can, because we don't want to disturb those really fine feeder roots that are trying to establish. So if you've planted it this year or last year or the year before, you're probably pretty good. It's probably pretty easy.
Okay.
The bigger it is, the harder it's going to be, and that's where you're going to start to run shock or kill it or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. And evergreens?
Yes, you can if you really want to do it. But again, we're watering them once a week to the bottom of that hole, because they're still doing their thing full tilt.
Okay.
But then that's where a design or a plan comes into play, right? We don't want to be moving all these things, especially things like evergreens that are.
Although this designer needs to move her weeping white spruce.
But you could probably do it.
Can I?
You could probably do it. How old is your weeping white spruce?
5.
Yeah, see, that's where you get your roots are probably out further and you can run into some
Yeah.
issues. But then I hear, was it Dave from Bartlett Tree Care?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, where he was saying, because we were talking to him, Mark, sorry. I don't know why I call him Dave all the time. Anyways, Mark from Bartlett Tree Care, and take a look at that podcast. You can search for that, talking about moving trees and planting trees and all the tips and tricks and mistakes. But I keep hearing him that, you know what, you can move them and they can be bare root and they're still fairly tough. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you'd be successful.
Oh, a little nerve-wracking, but
for sure.
For sure.
Yes. Yeah, I get nervous. The bigger and the longer it's been planted, the more worried I get too, because then you're cutting into roots, and then you can't move it, and then you're reefing on it, or you're tying chains to it or something.
Yeah.
And then you're digging into bark, and there's a whole big mess.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm gonna have a landscaper do it, but yeah. Still don't want to lose it, right?
No.
So we've got another question, John. Thank you for your message, John.
Yeah, John, that ties right in. So John's writing in and asking, can I trim my trees now? So again, just kind of be careful about what it is. We don't want to trim any of the big heavy sap movers.
Right.
Or
anything that's going to bloom in the spring.
Right, exactly.
Right. So, John, don't trim your lilacs.
Your forsythia, your magnolias, your rhododendrons, anything that you enjoy in the spring, we're going to let it ride out, and then we're going to prune it after. When it's all flowered and it's all done, we can do our good scaffolding and our shaping and everything like that, and let it grow out at that point.
Now, what about maple trees, or tree? John's just saying trees. Feel free to write back, John, and give us a specific, if there's a specific one that you're curious about.
Right. Yeah, your evergreens, things like that. You're like...
cedars and boxwood. We don't want to be trimming those, right?
Right. Okay. And then kind of like the maples, too. Your bigger evergreens, they can, again, they're heavy sap movers, they'll bleed out too. So they're better in the summer.
Is the sap really running now?
They tend to draw it back down.
Oh,
right?
okay.
They evacuate it. It goes down into the roots, and they store it over winter, the sugars and stuff.
Right.
So there's so much left in the cambium layer and the leaves and things.
Okay.
But the majority of it starts to move. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why we see the maples again, or the fruit trees, they tend to bleed a little bit. So it's better when it's up in the tree in the summer to go in and remove a leaf, because it won't actually bleed that much.
Okay. Okay. So hope that helps, John, and feel free, if you've got a specific tree, we're happy to help.
Yeah, we'd love to know which ones you need to prune back.
That's right. So, the other thing I want to mention, I don't know if you have it in your notes, moving, because we talked about moving, so transplanting some things. So one of the things we get asked a lot is peonies, transplanting rose bushes. That is still now a good, September, I would say October, beginning of October is a good time to do that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Now is the time definitely to move and divide your peonies and shift them around and do your thing with them. And your roses as well. They're pretty tough, and we're going to mound them, and they're going to give the roses extra protection. So, and they tend to be easier to move than not.
Yes, especially the shrub roses, I think, and the carpet roses, the smaller.
Especially those guys, they're so tough. Yeah.
So that is good.
So doing those and cutting those back if you need to. I'm not a big fan of cutting things back.
Yes.
For the winter. Yeah. Because you have. You can see, for example, a dogwood, just for example, because it's nice and bright, and we all know what that big red thing is. But those branches, they get windburnt. They're the ones getting swept. They're the tips where the water is the least. So they die back so far. So if you cut it in half, now those tips are going to die back so far. And then you're going to have this little shrubby thing that looks damaged again. And then again, back to what we were saying before. So yeah.
Okay.
One of the things, just touching about dogwoods, if you're one, and we were talking about cutting hydrangeas, if you do like cutting your stems to bring inside your willows, your dogwoods, fan willows, curly willows, hazels, things like that. Do it after we get a frost. Let the frost hit and harden off that stem.
Okay.
And then do your pruning for your Christmas urns or your indoors and things like that. If you don't, they can rot on the top of the tips.
Okay.
They can start to blacken.
Do you have to do it right, or can you wait even till the snow starts and then when it's time to do your Christmas, right?
Exactly.
Because we might get frost, but you're still probably a few weeks out from doing your Christmas container, for instance. So so wait, and so that's a good reason to grow some of those things, right? Is that you can then pull, instead of having to buy dogwood every year, you can just trim it back in beginning of mid-November or so,
right?
And then use them in your inside decorating for your house house or your Christmas containers.
That's it. Save yourself some money, and they reward you with brand new growth next year. That's just
right.
brightly
You
colored.
you won't even know.
You won't even know.
Right.
Won't even know.
Yeah, just like cutting my hydrangeas, like you never know. Like nobody can tell. My whole neighborhood could take some. Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to see it. So
Joanne's address is no. I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's
so
great.
We're talking about so kind of the plants. We talked about our transplanting and.
What about if there's some? I know you love your October stars.
I was just gonna say.
Were you okay?
Yeah. So I mean, so there's some other cool plants that
That's
are
why
out
I'm
there.
here, Matt. Just to interrupt you.
Go right ahead. And you know what? Just to interrupt myself, if you are just joining us, we are talking about October in the garden. It's our last. What are we going to do this month coming as we get prepared for the winter? So send all your questions to instudio101@gmail.com, and we can discuss what you do and don't need to do.
That's right.
And I think we're touching more on the don'ts that we.
Yeah, this time of the year. Well, I think even in the spring we say don't walk on it, don't do this, don't do that. So I think it's a lot of don'ts for sure. And I think that goes with our whole mandate of low maintenance in the garden and less is more.
Right.
The gardens in the forest are not, no one's cleaning it up. No one's pruning it back. And I know our residential homes aren't the same as the forest, but that same idea that the life cycle of the plants, can survive without us.
Yes, there's a whole, exactly.
That's right. Right. So I was mentioning about the Facebook groups and stuff and the different gardeners, beginner gardeners. So that's a common thing too, is it's really, really easy to have a beautiful, colorful June garden.
Yes.
You can do that with, no help, no expertise whatsoever. But having a garden that looks good in October, September, August. So I've seen some questions out there like, show me what's blooming in your garden. There's nothing blooming in mine and I want to know what to plant, that type of thing. So I think that's a great resource. You mentioned you've got some great October stars, which tend to overlap with the September stars. Yeah. But that's nice because of the cooler temperatures. I think things bloom a little longer, right?
That's right. Yeah, they definitely go much longer. Right now we're seeing sedums.
Right. Oh, goodness. Yes.
Yeah, there's sedums everywhere. The stone crop.
What's that razzle dazzle? Is it razzle dazzle? What's the little one that's mounding?
Mounding purple leaves with that kind of more magenta flower.
Yeah.
I think it's
dazzleberry or something.
I think it's dazzleberry. Yes. I want to say brazzleberry, but that's the container
fruit.
So dazzleberry.
Yes, I have to say, everybody go run out and get some.
I love using
my
that
goodness.
in the design.
And I have it on my it's definitely salt tolerant too.
Oh, good to know. Yeah,
and drought tolerant. No attention. It's on my curb, by the road. Yeah. I've got 3. I should get more. Definitely. I mean, it's the best sedum ever.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic sedum. The color.
Yeah. It doesn't get as big as the Autumn Joy, and the Autumn Joy has its place if you like that for sure. There's lots of ground cover sedums. Sedum's a big family for sure. Angelina with the yellow is always to die for. That looks great in my garden too, for sure.
For sure. For sure.
So when I mentioned the anemones.
Yes, you mentioned the anemones.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the other thing that, not only do we want to see flowers in our late season gardens, but it's good for the bees and good for the insects and all the pollinators, not just the honeybees, the native bees, all those things. So they need that as long as they can get it.
Yes.
And so seeing them roll, because the anemones have quite an open flower with quite a bit of pollen, what's in the center there.
All the pistons.
All the pistons and stuff. So it is hilarious watching them roll around in that. And it's great. So they are definitely looking. So that's another really important. People are always talking, even online, about what to grow, what pollinators to grow. And there's so many options in the summer, but I think people forget about the fall.
Yes, exactly. We have a question.
Oh, that's funny, Katie. Okay, we've got Katie's written in. I think she's a longtime listener. Wow, thank you for the great advice tonight. Love the apple show and the cannabis shows. I'm now making apple cannabis edibles, literally. Thank you, Katie. Well, you're going to have to share some. Yeah. So that is great. Thank you very much for writing in, and thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. That's hilarious. That's a great idea.
That's awesome.
Well,
yes,
tell
I
Susan
hope you enjoy.
Too. Yeah, Susan, our host of our guest for the apple show.
Are you using
great.
exotic apples,
Oh,
Katie?
that's right. That's right. That you grew yourself, Katie. So some of the other ones, like low light ones, we mentioned sedums and anemones, which are kind of more sun.
Mm-hmm.
The bug banes are one of your favorites with the more of a shade tolerant.
Yes. Yeah, I love the bug banes. Just big, tall, like big, broad. They're like 2 feet to 3 feet tall, 2 to 4 feet wide, but big, wide Japanese maple-like leaves. And then they reward you with massive tall spikes that can go like, some varieties even August, September, October. Beautiful. And they can smell citrusy or like citron or jasmine, that sort of smell. They have a beautiful smell. And they add some nice color and some body to the shady spots too.
Okay.
For sure.
Excellent. And I have to get some of these. I say that all the time. Toad lilies.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you pronounce it?
I call it, trichirtis.
Okay.
Because
So it sounds like a dinosaur. If I say
Yes.
it, but when you say it, okay.
Well, in Latin, there was no S sound on the C. The C always sounded like a K. So Joanne's rolling her eyes, falling asleep. So I love toad lilies. Yeah. They're very orchid-like stems.
They are,
They're kind
yes.
of alternately held, and the stems zigzag.
Where do we put them?
You're going to put them in the shade.
Okay.
And it's more of a moist shade garden. So they
Hence
don't like
the toad,
super dry.
Right? Is that where they kind of get the toad thing?
Probably, yeah.
I have no wet in my garden. Okay.
That's it. So a nice kind of evenly moist to moist.
Okay.
Shady spot with nice organic matter, and then they reward you with these big arching stems filled with these little star orchid-like flowers.
Okay.
That are purples and blues and whites and pinks and all sorts of variations of them. But I like things like Thunderstruck or Gilt Edge, where it's not blooming till the fall, but it still gives you some variegation on the leaf, so you can play with some textures and some colors with it.
Okay, so they'll still be noticeable in the garden in the summer.
Right. So
that's
you can
nice.
Give it a pop, and it's nice as other than like a hosta or
right.
the stereotypical default ones that give you that extra leaf color.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And for people, because usually when people say, what can I plant in a shady, wet spot, your mind goes blank sometimes. So that's a good go-to one. That and Ligularia. So that's kind of my tool belt. Although I do forget about this one, so I always remember the Ligularia. And it's funny. Remember I mentioned last week that we were at the Montreal Botanical Gardens last week, and not this past week and the weekend before. And the Chinese gardens were amazing in that exhibit. But there was this whole hillside. It was a really shaded hillside they had planted all, and it was fairly newly planted. Like I'm thinking they planted in the spring or they planted last fall. So it really hasn't filled in, right? But you saw the potential. All this hillside with Ligularia in the shade. But you could tell that the center got sun. So then all those plants, so that's all Ligularia, I don't know how much space, but it's massive, right? It's a massive space, but there must have been a 10 by 10 area that must have gotten much more sun. And so those Ligularia were all done. They were shriveled up and done. And it was kind of and even my husband, I'm who's not a gardener, and I kind of pointed, I'm okay, who's not happy in the sunshine, or, who's getting too much sun kind of thing. And it was just so funny to see, because it was all one plant, right? So it was so visible.
It was so pronounced.
So pronounced. Because that is one thing about botanical gardens, is you tend to get much more massing of plants and put on a great show. I'm not a fan of hostas that much, or especially with leaving their blooms on. But they had some areas where it was all the same hosta and all in bloom, and holy cow, did it make a sight. So I was like, wow, I really kind of take that back, But I mean, in our gardens, we can't fill it like that with it was a big space. So so shout out to my hosta lovers out there. So definitely that's a good to know. We've got a plant for fall, in the shade, and wet.
That's it.
Yay.
Exactly.
Excellent. The butterfly loving ones, Chiropterus and butterfly bush and hydrangea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hydrangea's kind of separate, but
and some asters as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Another one I like, wax bells. Kirin Geshoma palmate. yellow wax bells. They're pretty neat. A very broad, almost like water lily looking leaf on black stems.
Really?
With some nice edges. And then in September, October, they come out with these nice little yellow wax bells. And they don't like a dry shade, but
they're another
like
moist
an organic shade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a high organic matter with some where moisture doesn't just kind of vanish.
Okay.
But and they make a beautiful.
Are they more like a woodland?
Yeah, it's very like a woodlandy appeal.
Okay.
Yeah, and almost like a shrub substitute. She'd take up about a good 4x4, 5x5 area, and she's really neat.
Oh, I've never seen that. Yeah. I'm like picturing like little coral bell kind of ones, like that size. But they'll get like a shrub.
But they can get really big. Yeah,
really?
And like I've seen some of the leaves. It's probably, if you hold out your hand as wide as you can, the oldest or the biggest leaves, especially on the middle to bottom, are really big and showy.
Interesting. So but you'd find them in the so it's really is a perennial.
It is a perennial.
So it dies down and then it grows back.
And she just breathes in the spring, and she's like at full height again, and it's unreal.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's an unusual one. I love the jet black stems on them too, which is a really nice contrast. With
very interesting.
Medium green leaf.
Very interesting. So what else? In addition, oh my gosh, time is always flying. So some takeaways. So one of the things many people are thinking of and chatting about too online is planting bulbs. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be another one where we say, don't do it yet.
Yeah.
Don't do it yet. Right?
Yet. And tune in next week as well, because that's what we're going to talk about.
That's right.
We're going to elaborate all about bulbs, what to plant, all the cool different ones, and why they're so great. But yes, hold out on your bulbs.
It's still a little early. It's still a little warm. Better chance of, especially with tulips, the animals and critters are foraging like crazy. Yeah. And they are just going to take them. Or you're going to have to, do all those precautions and stuff like that. So it's just better to wait a little bit longer.
It's lower maintenance while you wait.
There you go.
Yes. We don't like being out in the late October or even early November because it's cooler and it's wetter, the ground.
Right.
But it is much better. You'll get a greater show, definitely. And it'll be a lot more less maintenance for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we covered the annuals and perennials.
Yeah, we talked about cutting back the diseased annuals or anything that's spent, any diseased leaves on your perennials and things like that.
Your houseplant should be in already.
Yeah, watch the it's been pretty cool at night. Tropical winter 16. We get a little bit more play in the fall by a couple degrees, 12 to 14, because we get a few cooler nights, which they kind of adapt to.
I've eased mine into the garage and I've cut it back and I've watered it well, but I need to top up some soil. So I haven't really brought it into the house, but it's been in the garage.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be okay.
Should be okay?
That should be fine. And take a look at any of them that you're going to bring inside. Make sure you don't have any pests or unwanted little creatures. They're usually things like pill bugs or little centipedes and a bunch of little scavengers that like the moist edges of the pots where they can squeeze in. So no harm really, but also start pulling back on your watering. It's going to be cooler. There's going to be shorter days. A lot of people start developing fungus gnats because the soil stays wet.
Of the houseplants.
Of your houseplants.
Okay. I just gave them a really good watering yesterday.
Well, yeah, right. And that's okay if they need it. But just, make sure that they're drying out. You're not keeping it wet, right?
Okay.
The top will always dry off, but the bottom will stay moist because the days are growing shorter and cooler. We tend to get fungus gnats settled in, and then we move them inside. And in like 3 weeks, they're like, what are these fruit flies in my house around my...
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. Our veggie garden, there's still people probably still harvesting a few things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing potatoes, and I'm going to be sowing my my garlic, so check out that show.
Okay.
But definitely, it's time to pick those fresh herbs, and we can freeze them for the winter harvest. We were at the wedding, and we were at the place we were at, the venue. There was a farmer who moved on to, it was like a golf course they had their place at.
Okay.
But part of the natural path was part of this farmer's house, and he was out picking the last of his apples. And he was getting I think I counted 15 to 20 bushels. Then he was just up on the ladder. So time to go grab the last of that nice fresh fruit before it starts to freeze or rot and fall off. And pick any of that disease stuff up.
Did you want to, because you mentioned cover crops, and we've talked about that briefly before, and that's purpose is to add some nitrogen back to the soil.
Right.
What is the best way to do that? And is it still time?
Yeah, so it's time to sow those cover crops, your clovers, your alfalfas, your other weird things.
Okay.
We're going to let them grow.
You buy the seeds at the store or garden center?
Yeah. We have a number of ones you can go. And you can even go, a lot of seed companies, if you go onto their websites and look for cover crops, it's becoming a bigger thing. So you can get a nice list of ones that might work for you.
And we're not doing anything to them. Like, we're just growing them for the sake of them just then dying back and adding nutrients to the soil.
That's exactly what we're going to do.
There we go. I answered my own question.
Yeah, we're going to fix that nitrogen, till in that organic matter. And
so we do want to, we'll till in the spring?
Yeah, we'll let it grow up so far, and then we're going to till it back in. Okay. And depending on what you planted, maybe less or more or less time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they'll grow
season,
this fall?
Maybe
like they're not going to grow all winter?
No. They're just kind of overwinter and freeze and do their thing, depending on, if you've done it like 2 months ago. Right. Or started again, a shorter one, you might have it already. And you leave it up and just till in what's ever left over. But Yeah. So like you said, fixing nitrogen and just returning nutrients, which is usually nitrogen, back into the soil.
Okay.
Yep. Giving that field.
Are there any other ways to add some more nitrogen to the soil that we should do now versus the spring?
Just like compost, you can add your composts, the shredded leaves, again, if you have clean leaf litter, letting that break down. There's nothing more nutrient dense than a fallen leaf from a tree. So, shredding all those leaves and mulching them out. You can use them for plant protection, and then either just tilling the rest of whatever didn't decompose, or just turning it in the spring as well.
Okay.
We'll add some nutrients back into your soil.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it's free.
Yeah, that's right.
Think of all those bags on your, and it's just pure fertilizer.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, so you talk about lawns. So keeping lawns clean of too many leaves, shred and spread. So running them over with your lawnmower, or I think a lot of people will blow them into a pile and then, kind of mulch them up, and then you can shoot them back into the garden, right?
Yeah, and we want it nice and fine. We don't want like a half of a leaf being put back down.
Or whole leaves.
We want them nice and as fine as you can get it, and just kind of very, very thin, leaving them in there again. Yep, and letting them break down.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did a whole show, so Google that or search for that.
Thinking.
Yes, on lawn care for the fall.
Yeah.
We should have that date, but we don't. But
I hesitated for.
If you can search back for all those tips and tricks for the fall lawn care in past shows.
Yeah, exactly. Pedro writes in. Pedro says, "Hi, I know that you probably don't want to talk about this stuff, but
we don't, Pedro. We don't.
When is your Christmas show? I always look forward to the Christmas season. Tips for trees, wreaths, etc. Well, A, we haven't thought of a date.
Right.
B, if you have,
you're ahead of us, Pedro.
You are.
Yes.
And if you have a thought, like maybe something that you want us to hear us talk about that you haven't before, we'd love to know what any listener is thinking about, whether it's Christmas or anything at any time of year.
Right.
We're always open to ideas. But we do, Pedro number 3, have a couple shows on their podcast. So you can Google Down the Garden Path podcast.
Right.
Last year we did the tree one, live versus artificial or everlasting. What's good there, and we can we touch on wreaths and wilt proof and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, for sure. But we're always looking to ways to change it up and really make sure that we're talking about things that everybody's really interested in or really helpful to you. So we love the feedback. So that's where that comes in.
Right, and we're delving into, as we got like 3 minutes left, we are delving into Facebook Live. So last year we were pretty adventurous by doing a big urn container, but we could do decorating wreaths and show you some different things as well.
That's right. And we also are considering we have many listeners and questions during the show, and we're in the process of setting up a Facebook group for Down the Garden Path. So please search for it on Facebook. Let us know if you want to join.
Yeah.
We'll put the more information about each show up there.
So we can spread some of these tips and tricks.
Absolutely.
And take pictures of things.
That's right.
Christmas and all sorts of fun stuff.
You could post some design dilemmas for us that we can, talk about, we can help you with, or then, talk about on the show. We just thought that'd be another way for you to reach us.
That's right. So, speaking of reaches, I think we've reached the end of our show.
We have, and we hope we've told you lots of all the things you shouldn't be doing in the month of October and a few of the things that you should be.
That's right. So reach out to us. You can always reach us here at Reality Radio 101, at InStudio101 at gmail.com. You can find myself, write me directly, Matthew at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca or just naturalaffinitydesigns.ca, www. Joanne, you can be found at
downtoearth.ca with the number 2. And all my social media connections are there. So they all have, different taglines. So it's easier to find them right on my website.
Yep.
So, and our past shows are there, as well as your favorite podcast app.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So tune in, like, share, comment, leave us a note. We always love hearing from our listeners and what you guys are up to. And I think Gary is there, but not there. We'll keep going.
Yeah, exactly. We want to thank everybody for joining us down the garden path. And we've got, like we said, next week we're going to talk about bulbs. And we still would love any feedback on what else you'd like to hear us talk about as this garden season winds down.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gail, Janice, John, Katie, and Pedro for writing us in this evening. Thank you, Gary, as always, for providing us the most delicious coffee and producing the show.
That's right. Thank you, Gary. And thank you, everyone, for joining us down the garden path here on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.